Don't worry, there's nothing to worry about unless there's a void collapse.
I'll go get someone to pull you out.
Thinking he's gonna go get a rope or a vine, better much. We'll see vines later. But he comes back with a snake. And what does Indiana Jones hate? He hates snakes.
There's no Sears and Roebuck here. Grab the snake. I'm calling it that. Grab the snake.
Hey, what's poppin', corn dogs? Danny Noodle, welcome back. Hey, all you kernels, get ready to frickin' pop. Because we are back with a brand new episode and also the franchise of the year. It's going to be a great one. I am one of your hosts. I'm Captain Pop. I am Captain Crunch. I'm one of the concession stand kids. And I can't be a concession stand kid without my best snack buddy in line with me so I can bum $5 off the guy to get my Milky Way and Twinkies. And I don't think they sell Twinkies at the movie theater, but I'm James. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm here with my best friend, Nick Justice, my co-host.
Oh, thank you for the introduction, my friend. I'm Nick. I'm the guy in line letting you bum $5 because that's what we do around here. It's a lot of give, a lot of take, and I'm referred to around here as the chief corn dog, little corny, little doggy, and it all mixes together, me and my bud. Like you said, franchise of the year, and I'm excited for this one.
Yes. So if you clicked on this episode, if you know what you're getting yourself into, we are watching the fourth Indiana Jones movie. Indiana Jones is our franchise of the year. And we're watching Crystal Skull, which is a movie I've never seen. Nick, I imagine you have seen this before.
Yes, I have.
Were you happy to revisit?
So I was. And if anyone in the audience has seen this movie before, you know it is not regarded as the best Indiana Jones. It left a sour taste in my mouth, having seen it. So I was excited to go back and say, you know what? Did I give it an unfair shake in my younger years? Because I haven't really watched it in, maybe 10 years. I mean, it's been a long time.
Yep. So we're going to unpack all of that and more in this episode. But before we do, Nick, we need to get warmed up. We got to pop the kernels. We got to deep fry them corn dogs because it's time for our quiz. And we invite you guys to play along. Okay, Nick is pulling up the Cinematrix quiz, courtesy of vulture.com. If you're new to the show, if you don't know what Cinematrix is, it's a 3x3 grid quiz. Typically, we got actors on one side. We have categories on the other, and we have to match up those two actors' categories with a single movie that ties them together. We cannot use the same movie twice, and we have to go for obscure movies for a high score so that we could be the top percentage of players of the day. Our record is top 2 of the day, always going for the 2, always going for that record-breaking 1% of players of the day. But most importantly, we're trying to keep our perfect streak going. And we only have 9 guesses for our 9 squares. So if we get one wrong, we're screwed. Nick, who do we have for our actors?
For our actors, we have Lawrence Fishburne, Charlize Theron, and Nicholas Hoult.
Okay. I feel pretty good about those guys. How about you?
Yeah, I feel really good about that. But let's see what the categories are before we get ahead of ourselves.
Categories are title contains an X, release date 2010 to 2019, and 4+ words in the title. Nick, are we going to go perfect?
I'd be surprised if we didn't.
Okay, where do you want to start in that case?
Let's start left to right. Let's start at the top. Let's start with our boy, Lawrence Fishburne. Title contains an X, and we have, I think, 3 very obvious ones here.
I think we do. That's probably his most famous role, being, I almost said Morbius, but it's Morpheus.
It's Morbin time.
It is not Morbin time, it is Morphin time, because he's a Power Ranger. So obviously for contains an X, we have Matrix. 4+ words in the title. We can think of some there for sure.
I think I have a sneaky one.
Okay, do you want to start there? Just throw
Sure.
the answer my way? What do you got?
Let's do it. So he was not a prominent character, but he was Lois Lane's boss in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
I can go with that. You think people are gonna be smart? Because we're always trying to outsmart and outguess the rest of the quiz takers, and hope that that's a obscure answer. Do you think people will? It's hard to keep a pulse on these things because we get surprised when things are low percentage and when things are high percentage.
Yeah, I feel good about this one.
Well, we can plug that in because I have one for release date, and obviously for X, it will probably be a Matrix.
All right. Well, let's go with Dawn of Justice. 4+ words.
Let's go. And it was
3%.
a perfect selection. It was a perfect
Let's
selection.
Go.
That is awesome.
I was thinking, I was between that and if you remember him as Furious Styles of Boys in the Hood, I was thinking that could have been another option, but that one might have been a little more popular.
I think that might have been because I've seen Dawn of Justice once, and I couldn't really tell you.
Most people
who was
have
in
only seen it once.
Besides Henry and Ben and Gal. But for release date, I was just gonna go to my MCU well. I'm gonna nominate Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ooh, I like that. I was thinking one of the John Wicks, but I like Ant-Man and the Wasp.
We're gonna go DC and we're gonna go Marvel. Let's guess it.
11%. We take those.
All right. Yeah, we like that. We like that.
And now the question is, which Matrix are we going to take?
Like, this is where I would go with that second movie, but then when we had Carrie Fisher release date and we went with Last Jedi, it was the most popular. So I think people are getting on to our big brain plays of picking the second movie in a trilogy. Should we go Revolutions? Not the first one.
No, definitely not
one.
The first one.
I think the
we can
second
go Revolutions.
Okay,
we can go Revolutions.
Let's hit up Revolutions for Lawrence Fishburne. Title contains an X. All right, 23%. That's fine.
I feel like all of them were going to be. The first one's probably around 50, and the next two probably split the difference. So I don't think we were going to win much there.
Fine with me. Moving down to Charlize Theron.
Old Charlie's.
Charlie. So for Charlie, contains an X. I'll have to think about that one.
Well, there's an obvious one.
Oh, what's the obvious one? Am I missing it?
Well, it's Mad Max Fury Road, my friend.
Oh, duh.
I would like to use that for release date if we needed to. Because there was a movie in the early 2010s that many folks forgot about. It was called Aeon Flux. Do you remember this one? And the A and the E had the weird, like, how Elon Musk spells his kid's name kind of thing.
Oh, Kyle?
Maybe.
I think he used that weird AE to spell Kyle, but that sounds familiar, and I am 100% in on that one for X. The only other one I was going to say was Fast X. So I think Aeon Flux, what is it?
That's how I say it, Aeon Flux.
Aeon Flux?
Yeah, it's this weird AE symbol thing.
Oh, yeah.
She was Aeon Flux. So I know for a fact she's in this movie.
Kyle Flux.
25.
Okay.
Wow.
That is our most popular it's our highest percentage so far, but
I felt really good about that.
No, no regrets. I felt really good about that one. Release date. Okay, so I'm
gonna leave this one up to you.
Okay. I feel like we should not go Fury Road. I feel like that's going to be too popular. Unless you're banking on people using that for the X.
Well, with Aeon Flux only getting 25, I don't know.
I would nominate Fate of the Furious, or would post credits count? Because I feel like they didn't count one time. Because she shows up as some weird wizard lady at the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which could be 4+ words, but I feel like movies haven't counted post-credit scenes as credits in some cases, so I'm not willing to do that. So release date, I would say go with Fate. Fate of the Furious.
The Fate of the Furious.
Let's lock it in. Release date. Oh, let's
4%.
Go. All right. That's our second best guess so far.
Nice.
All right.
For 4+ words in the title, I do have a more of a deep cut.
I love deep cuts.
It's a great movie. It's a movie that has a subject that I'm very passionate about, as you know, and that is golf. There's a movie called The Legend of Bagger Vance with Will Smith, where he plays Bagger Vance, a caddy, mythical caddy. Just a great movie. Highly recommend to anybody who likes golf or good movies. Legend of Bagger Vance.
Let's go, Bagger. And
that's
it matches.
4%.
Vin Diesel up top at 4%. Let's go. Nick with the big brain golf play. All right. Moving down to Nicholas Holt. Very obvious for X. I'm trying to think of a different one that is not X-Men, but I am not sure.
Well, Mad Max Fury Road. He was nuts.
Oh my God. I keep forgetting about Fury Road.
Since we've reviewed Fury Road, do we need to have it as one of our answers here today?
It'd be against the spirit of the pod not to. So yes, we 100% do.
Okay. Do you want that for title containing an X or release date?
I think X, because a lot of people are going to go for X-Men.
All right. Mad Max Fury Road. Here we go. 16%.
We take
those. Release date 2019 or 2010 to 2019. So we could do 2 X-Men's here. One for 4+ word in the title, one for release date. And I'd feel just fine continuing the perfect streak here.
Yes. I think we can go with, let's go Apocalypse for release date. Does that 100% was 2016?
Mm-hmm. Let's check it out. 16%. We take that.
16 for 2016. I'm down with it. 4+ words in the title.
Days of Future Past. I don't know if X-Men's 1 word or 2 words. So that's why I was going to go with Days of Future Past.
Let's play it safe and go with Days of Future Past.
Oh, it's 64%.
They hit us with the 64 at the end.
But we're
there.
top 8% of players today. We're top 8%.
Let's go.
Players.
Top 8.
So
I'll take that. I'll take that. We're correct. Let's go over the most popular answers here. For Lawrence Fishburne, movie with an X, we got The Matrix, John Wick 2, I think is that what that one is on the screen?
For release date.
John Wick 2 for release date, and then Boys in the Hood for 4+ words in the title. So we made the better guess there with Dawn of Justice.
For Charlize Theron, containing an X, we have Mad Max Fury Road. For release date, we have Atomic Blonde. I remember that one. And then 4+ words in the title is also Mad Max Fury Road.
And for Nicholas Holt, most popular with an X is going to be X-Men First Class. Release date is going to be Warm Bodies. And 4+ words in the title is going to be X-Men Days of Future Past, our most popular guess. Let's look at the rarest guesses here.
Lawrence Fishburne. We have Michael Jordan to the Max. I don't know if that's a documentary or what. For release date, we have Thurgood, which looks like a biopic of Thurgood Marshall. And then for 4+ words in the title, we have Band of the Hand. Never heard of that.
Band of the Hand. Okay. For Charlie, rarest somehow with X in the title is going to be Mad Max or Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Release date is going to be The Last Fight. 4+ words in the title is going to be The Life and Death of Peter Sellers.
And to wrap it up, our boy Nicholas Holt, his title containing an X was also Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
He was in that?
For release date, we had... that's what I was thinking. Did Nux show up?
In archival footage?
Cameo?
Or maybe he played a different... He probably was hidden in the background as a secret character. Like, they do that all the time. They always reuse actors and throw them in as different characters.
For release date for Nicholas Holt, we have Newness. And then for 4+ words in the title, we have a movie called Coming Down the Mountain, which looks like it was a film school senior project.
Borefest.
Based on, So people cheat, and that's just that. But another week, James, and another perfect.
I'm going to count it out here because we broke our streak back at Leonard Part 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
cursed episode
6.
in general.
That's the 7th perfect quiz in a row.
Awesome.
What's our record? What's our record here? I think we started a perfect streak at Solo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, no, we're smashing records over here. Our previous perfect streak was 5 episodes. Now we're 7.
Just smashing records out here on the Just Play It podcast.
We be smashing, and we're doing it together. And now we're gonna smash cut to the movie we're talking about this week, which, like I said, is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's from 2008, and it's part of our franchise of the year. We're watching all of the Indiana Jones movies. within the year, spread out. So we're coming in on the third, fourth quarter of the year. We're at the fourth movie. It was a first watch for me. I was very interested. Spoilers, if you haven't seen this movie, I remember people talking. It was aliens, it was garbage, and you shouldn't see it. And I said, sounds like a job for us. I am in. Sign me up.
Boom.
So this is directed by Steven Spielberg. He's directed all of the Indiana Jones movies so far. And there's a lot of same cast of characters, from the actors to the crew returning. John Williams, Kathleen Kennedy, George Lucas, Frank Marshall. We got everybody back. Editors are back. Sound guys are back. Spielberg's pulling up with his crew. And he says, you know what? We did it 1, 2, 3 times. Fourth time is the charm. So we'll see about that.
We've seen movies do a reboot, because at this point it is a, would you call it a reboot after taking
Sequel. I would call it a sequel.
Call it a sequel. But when you wait that long, you have a lot of, they'll phone it in a little bit and just rest on the laurels of the character and the previous movies and the nostalgia. But Paramount said, no, we're going all in. We're bringing back the whole damn crew into here. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that they put the money in, got all the same people involved. My respect there. I know, like you said, this isn't the most beloved of the movies, but they're starting off on the right foot at least.
Yeah, I think the good intentions there, and they had the game plan set out. It was all about execution. And the point guard, the quarterback of this game plan, is going to be Harrison Ford. He's back. He's the only guy who can play Indiana Jones. And it was actually his idea to continue the franchise, because people would always come up to Spielberg or George Lucas or Harrison Ford and say, when are you going to do another Indiana Jones movie? We need it. We want it. We want more. And this is in those times when Hollywood's all about keeping the cash cow, pumping out money, and keeping franchises running. And we got over the idea that it needed to be trilogies and we were done. We're like, let's go. Let's keep the money rolling. Let's keep the stories rolling. So Harrison Ford said, yo, let's do this. The fans want it. George Lucas is the guy that kind of motivated Spielberg to get back into the mood to continue Indiana, because he was comfortable leaving it at Last Crusade. But George says, no, let's do this. You know, was it 20 years later? On brand of that, the Indiana Jones trilogy, it was, like we've discussed in our previous episodes, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg wanted to emulate those 1930s serials that would be shown in cinemas back in the day that were just adventure action stories. So they emulated the same type of storytelling in the first 3 Indiana Jones movies. So for this one being 20 years later, George Lucas said, we should do Aliens and do a play on the 50s B-movie science fiction movies that we grew up watching. So he said this was a cinematic equivalent to emulating the 1930s serials with the 80s ones. And let's go with the cheesy 50s alien movies with this one.
George Lucas had this idea for Indiana Jones, and it was basically, hey, let's do aliens. And he said this will be like a B movie. It'll be like those 1950s B movies, Earth versus Flying Saucers, and all those exploitation movies that were really about government paranoia, Cold War fears and things like that, and Hollywood turned them into invaders from Mars.
It was the idea of taking the genre from the 1930s serials, action-adventure serials, to the B science fiction movies of the 50s, in the early 50s. And I said, if we move the whole thing into the 50s, which would be age-appropriate for Harrison, that would be the cinematic equivalent. And I wanted to rest it on a cinematic antecedent like we did with the other one.
It's a bold idea because I feel like the serials work. We talked about it in our other Jones pods. It was a lot of action. There was never really that much story to it. It was really just a giant thrill ride. And I think Last Crusade had a little bit more story in it, which is why we pumped it up. It was our favorite so far. But this one, with the mission to be a bad, cheesy B movie, makes you think, okay, they had the intent of being a little bit out there and outrageous, but is that what we necessarily want? What are your thoughts on that?
I've never heard that take from...
George said it. George said in an interview I watch all the behind the scenes featurettes and how these come to concept, and he said it.
Hold on. Because I've heard George say things sometimes to backtrack on his work a little bit. To say, oh, no, it was supposed to be bad and cheesy. Like, those bad parts were really meant to be there. So I'll take it with a grain of salt.
I was going to bring that up, too. Is that like a cover your ass, or was it authentic?
I mean, I'd make that excuse.
Me too.
You know, it's like
too.
when you lose in Madden to your friend or your brother, you go, well, I wasn't even trying. So it doesn't count.
So
it feels a little that way.
Can't fault me. So I'm going to put that out there. Harrison's Ford to run it back for a fourth movie, and George's idea to bring in aliens. Spoilers. Rounding out our cast, we have Shia LaBeouf, who was hella hot back in the day. He was coming off Even Stevens. He was all about Transformers. I call this is the mainstream Hollywood era of Shia LaBeouf before he went a little crazy and then started doing his own thing and found his own artistic lane. And now I think he's doing a lot better. He's in a lot better place. But this is kind of on that cusp of him being shoved out in the forefront, and studios love him. And I'm wondering if they threw him in here because Transformers is also a Paramount property. So maybe they thought, oh, we'll get Shia to jump in this.
I think they saw him in Transformers, saw him as an actor who can carry a franchise. And I believe they thought they could pass the torch on to Shia LaBeouf. We had a lot of that.
Yeah, they hinted that, but I don't know if they were ever going to commit to that.
I'm guessing, again, similar to Lucas there, they were going to gauge, test the waters, feel the temperature.
I think so,
put
too.
Their finger in the air, see if audiences responded. And if they did, I think they would have taken off with Shia, which wouldn't have been the worst idea. Like you said, he was hot, man. He was the guy. So
great idea for the studio, but I think ultimately you got to just leave it with Harrison Ford. It's got to be born with Ford and go to bed with Ford, in my opinion.
I can't think of any successful handoffs of franchises. I'm trying to
James
think
Bond.
out loud. Yeah, but they're not the same Bond, right? There's just always James Bond.
Well, that's what
who
we're talking
exists.
about. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. A different actor taking up the mantle of the main character.
I guess. But anyway, I always find it really difficult. I think about Marvel nowadays, right? Trying to pass on, we have a new Captain America, which Anthony Mackie may be great. I haven't watched any of the stuff because it's hard to reinvest into a new character the same energy that you put into the first one. It's nothing against the actor or the creatives. It's just really hard for audiences to get on board with.
I agree. Kate Blanchett's also in this movie. She's our big bad of this movie. So those are three main big build actors we have on the call sheet. Nick, what do we got for dollar signs? What's going on with this one?
Well, like we said, they really committed to bringing back the whole crew. And so that inflated our budget to about $185 million on the estimated budget. So this is a big budget film. But, James, it did pay off because worldwide box office, $786 million. That
you better be thankful Shia LaBeouf was on the poster, Paramount, because he brought in the big bucks.
I was having this conversation with my wife, actually, which is really funny. And it was after the Olympics when Tom Cruise was going to do the pass off to the LA Olympics. And my wife goes, couldn't you find somebody bigger than Tom Cruise? I said, sweetheart, don't you ever underestimate the foreign market's love of American action adventure movies.
Yeah, it opened up domestically to $100 million. So that's the first weekend, which is great. It grossed $317 million domestically. So yeah, the rest of that did come from the international audiences.
Talking over $450 million.
It's pretty crazy because Mad Max Fury Road is a very expensive movie as well, but that is $35 million less than this one. This is more, and this is 7 years earlier. So they were all in because you have the name of Spielberg, Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, Shia LaBeouf is so hot right now, so they went for it. And you know what? They struck gold because that's a 427% return on the budget.
Yeesh.
Nick, I want to talk about the crystal skulls real quick because apparently, quote unquote, these are based on real things. And then after further investigation, psych, not really.
Hit me.
A lot of the Indiana Jones movies take real life or historical accounts of historical objects or mythological objects, the Holy Grail, Ark of the Covenant, whatever Temple of Doom was. So for the crystal skulls, I have a little backstory on it. This traces back to 1856. We got a British museum purchased a skull that was claimed to have been crafted by Aztec hands. 1897, the British Museum purchased a second crystal skull from Tiffany and Company, and it's actually still on display today. Skulls in the Aztec realm of archaeological sites are often found carved into walls of these temples. However, no crystal skull has ever been documented by any archaeological dig site in Mexico or anywhere else in South America. In fact, none of the examples in the museum collections can actually be traced back to a dig site. So the skulls that have been found at Aztec dig sites are typically carved in basalt, not crystal. No crystal skulls coming from that area of the world.
It'd be really hard to carve crystal. Like carving crystal with ancient tools. I mean, you're just...
Wait for it.
Okay.
The skulls that have been that have been found, they have been carved out of crystal. And by the turn of the millennium, archaeologists were beginning to suspect that most, if not all, of the Aztec skulls were fake.
Okay.
This is suspicious because in 2008, what happens, Nick? This movie comes out.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the skulls probably get some renewed interest.
Crystal Skull is trending. An anonymous donor mails a skull to the Smithsonian, and they claim that they acquired it in 1960, later analyzed and determined to have been carved with modern tools, in addition to being coated with a synthetic abrasive called carborundum, which wasn't even invented until relatively recently for the time.
I love when people think they're going to pull
a fast one. Oh, wait till you hear about this legend that I got I'm name dropping. I got this off an article from IFL Science. Records show that the quartz skull housed at the British Museum was originally acquired by Tiffany and Company from a French dealer named Eugene Bobon, aka a problem. The fact that no crystal skull had appeared in any archaeological dig site didn't deter Bobon from passing them off as genuine Aztec relics. And most museums were more than happy to believe that he had authentic Aztec crystal skulls because it would bring in people to the museum. It would draw in a lot of tickets. In spite of this, the skull that eventually found its way to the British Museum was actually rejected by the Museo Nacional de Mexico in 1885, who denounced Bobon as a scammer. Undeterred by his setback, Bobon promptly found an alternative seller, and the world soon became obsessed with fake Aztec crystal skulls. So this whole plot, this is big problem number one, is that this movie is based on a lie. Crystal skulls were never proven to be from Aztec, Mayan, any Mesoamerican culture artifacts. It's from this French guy, Eugene Bobon. We can thank him for 2008's Crystal Skull.
Absolutely. It just never ends with them.
That's crazy. So I was cringing, but also laughing at watching that behind the scenes featurette where they were interviewing Lucas and Spielberg and Harrison Ford talking about real life crystal skulls, because it seems like they're just bullshitting their way through it, saying, oh yeah, the crystal skulls are amazing. They have a very mysterious background, and some people say it's got paranormal origins, and we're quite unclear, but it's very fascinating that those people back then made these crystal skulls. And what I'm seeing today is they didn't.
They most definitely... Do you know what it would be like to pull that size crystal out of the ground and then I don't. All right. Bobon,
so we're starting off on the wrong foot. Bobon created this movie single-handedly, and that's the start we get. It's based on something that's not true. It's not authentic, which is symbolically a bad omen for the movie, in my opinion.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, how about we go ahead, read this log line, and then jump into Spielberg and Lucas's version of these crystal skulls.
I am in. Read it to me, Nick.
Set in 1957, it pits Indiana Jones against Soviet KGB agents led by Irina Spalko, searching for a telepathic crystal skull located in Peru.
What is it?
I guess the movie? This is the log line I pulled from IMDb.
No, I know.
I thought it was worded really
says
weird.
It pits Indiana Jones against the KGB. What are we talking about? The crystal skull? Okay. All right. Well, with that confusing log line, a cloudy backstory, and some good intentions, it's time to jump into plot talk.
Plot talk.
I got to shout this out. The Paramount logo, it's been a staple in the Indiana Jones movies so far. Don't know if they do it in Dial, but for the first 4, they have the Paramount logo, and then it transposes into something on screen that's part of the movie that's tangible. This one is going to be a CGI prairie dog mound, and we get a super 2008 CGI prairie dog, straight prairie dog, and hops out the ground, almost gets ran over by a rat rod. We're in the 50s. We're time accurate to Harrison Ford's aging. This is 1957, ladies and gentlemen.
It is, and we're opening to some crazy kids. They're driving alongside some military vehicles. They get into a race with these vehicles. They're going to a military base. We drive by this little diner called the Atomic Cafe, get a little card that says Nevada 1957 on the screen, and we kind of put together we're at a nuclear site. Atomic Cafe, Nevada, 1957. There's a weapons testing facility.
Big Hulk vibes.
Big time Hulk vibes. Well, our military vehicles drive up to the entrance and they get denied, saying, "Sorry, sir, no one's allowed in here." But too bad, James, because these aren't actually United States military personnel. It's Russians. So
this was
used
cool.
to be the Nazis.
This was cool.
Now it's the Russians.
This was a cold-blooded opening because they murder these guys, and I thought, oh, dang, okay, let's go. Let's strap in. We are not bumbling, stumbling this time. We are cold, precise, and lethal. These Russians straight murder all these, what we'll learn to find out is Area 51 guards at the gate. They drive in, and we're introduced to our hero, our Lord and Savior, Indiana Jones, via a trunk of a car. And we get that nice vintage Indiana Jones introduction with the shadow silhouette and the hat. And Harrison Ford picks it up, puts it on his head. He's standing with another guy who's his partner and just goes,
Russians.
So we don't like communists when we're in the Indiana Jones world or any world, really. So,
no,
like you said, Indy and his buddy Mac, they're captive. We're going to get introduced to our big bad. You mentioned her earlier, Kate Blanchett, and she's playing Irina Spalko.
Super Russian, very Edna Mode hairstyle, very precise and sharp looking. And she seems like she's a bit of a crazy person because she's trying to read Indiana Jones's mind. And I thought, all right, unhinged, power hungry lady, here we go.
Yeah, and we are at this big warehouse, this government storage facility. And right here, James, I recall thinking, this is our big warehouse from the end of Raiders, where the Ark gets put into that big warehouse. You know, the famous line, it's being looked at by top men. And then you zoom out. So it's that warehouse, right? It's not an Easter egg to it. It's literally that warehouse. And the Russians are looking for some mummified remains in this warehouse.
Yeah, and it gets confirmed later that this is 100% the final resting place of the Ark of the Covenant because it makes a little cameo near the end of this sequence. So for this mummified remains, they do drop hints that it's something to do with Indiana Jones, something that he had to do with 10 years ago. So that would be 1947. So I'm writing down, all right, what happened in 1947? A box gets revealed and it says Roswell, New Mexico. And I thought, oh, okay, this is the whole Roswell, New Mexico weird incident. People think a UFO crashed there. Maybe it did. Indiana Jones finds this crate because he asked for gunpowder and shotgun pellets and throws them into the air, and then they magnetically are drawn to this thing that they're looking for. I want to point something out here, Nick, and I know you have a problem with the magnetic properties because it doesn't quite make sense. This is the first of our sign of the times for the Indiana Jones movies. This is going to be a talking point that is going to pop up every now and then as we go through the plot, and we can talk about it afterwards. But the evolution of effects really shifted towards CGI at this point, because our first Indiana Jones movies, a lot of it had to be practical. And when there was CGI, it was pretty bad. So now we're kind of relying a little bit more on CGI. And I have to say, I did enjoy that. I didn't know if they did this practically with a giant magnet or with fishing lines and stuff or a leaf blower, but this magnetic crate is drawing in a lot of metal objects, and you can see metal objects rolling across the ground. You see the lamps on the ceiling get drawn towards a central spot. The fake soldiers' dog tags, they are attracted to the metal crate. So that's actually all CGI. And after I found that out, I thought, oh, that looked pretty good. There's a lot of reliance on CGI that I think is very noticeable, but this is going to be our first of many changes to how Indiana Jones shows us these extravagant things that happen on screen. But what's the issue with everything being magnetic here, Nick? There's a lot of questions now that it starts pulling the lamps on the ceilings. It's pulling random stuff on the ground. So it seems like a super strong magnet.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, it's been in this box the whole time. It can pull pellets from hundreds of feet away. Has it not been affecting these lights the whole time? The soldiers' guns? Right? There's a lot of metal going on in the scene, and it seems to only be affecting very specific things. These shotgun pellets, the gunpowder, the light, just inconsistent to me. And that's going to be a theme this movie. I'm going to think it seems to be magnetic when it's convenient, and then when it's inconvenient, we stop being so magnetic. So I'm not going to try and harp on it too much, but I do have an issue with how magnetic
it is an issue. And you know what? You can make a real life tie to the crystal skulls of real life, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories about them, that they are computers and they hold knowledge and they only reveal information when they want to. So you can chalk it up to that BS reason of it only attracts certain objects when it wants it to. Maybe in this case, it would be the skull that we'll find out is the magnet wanted the soldiers and Indiana Jones to find it. So it started attracting it to them on purpose. So there's not a whole lot of clarity. It's very unclear. You can make up reasons like the one I just did. I just BS my way through that, like George Lucas himself. But that's going to be a question in this movie. 100%.
So we get to these mummified remains, and Spalko, our big bad, she cuts it open, and we get our first look of our alien, right? First time you're seeing this, don't know it's an alien yet, but you see this curled up little hand.
You saw Roswell before in 1947. You're like, oh, all right, they're going with aliens on this one. Okay.
Yeah. Now, Indy does get the jump on one of these Russians, and he and Mac get a gun. But, you know, I got to appreciate these story beats, because this is very classic Indiana Jones, because our boy Mac double crosses him. So we have a classic betrayal. As Indy gets away, we have awful henchmen just spraying their bullets everywhere. And this is the start of kicking off our classic opening Indy chase sequence. Every movie, we get a betrayal, some bad henchmen, and a nice long chase. And this movie follows the same formula.
We do get a lot of sick stunts and car crashes. There's a lot of fun choreography going on in the scene where the cars crashing into each other are for sure real. And there's a stuntman that jumps off the car and jumps onto a swinging lamp and then up to a rafter. I thought, oh, this is awesome. I hope the rest of the movie is like this, because this is enjoyable. This is classic Indy. and they're upping the stunts and what they can do with CGI and just safer stunt practices. And I think this is cool.
We do get away. We get on a rocket ride. We're in a government facility.
They got all kinds of fun, crazy toys over there. There's a rocket on a train track for some reason.
He lands on that, gets pulled through tons of G-forces out into the Nevada desert, but he ends up in a nuke town. For those who don't know, a nuke town is an old town built in the desert. They built it to the scale of a small city, and they used it for bomb testing. And Indy realizes we have countdown time, and we need to get out of this nuclear blast. Now, he's just a man. How is he ever going to get out of this nuclear blast, James?
Fridge. This is the famous fridge scene. Fridge, he hops into a fridge. They make it a point to show that it's lead lined. And I looked it up and thought, does that have anything to do with radiation blast and whatnot? Kind of, but for the most part, scientists agree that Indy would be dead 50 different ways in this sequence. But he hops in a fridge, and Fridge straight goes yeet across the desert, actually passes up one of the Ruskies' cars. So he picked the faster way out of here. A lot more dangerous, but that car blows up within the blast radius. Not much. This is giving me a nitpick. This is one of my nitpicks right here.
Nitpicks.
The fridge is the only thing that gets projectile shot out of the site, while everything else stays in place and catches on fire, or just blows up, or is blown 20 feet from some high wind force. But the fridge is out of here, dude. Of course, he lands very harshly on the ground. It tumbles, dead from whiplash, dead from a hard impact, dead from the explosion itself, dead from the fridge never making it out of there. But this is an Indiana Jones movie, and apparently, via George Lucas's mouth, a cheesy B movie. So that's where we're at. We're at shark number 1 jumped right here. How many shark jumps do you get before you're out? How many shark strikes?
No, we'll give him 3. We'll give him the classic 3. When he gets out of the fridge, he does lay eyes on our groundhog.
CGI groundhog.
That we saw in the opening. And I always do appreciate this about all of our indie movies, is that opening chase scene always has a beginning, middle, end. It's like its own little serial at the beginning of the movie. It's always action-packed. You enter a scene in the middle of it, right? Indy's already involved in something. There's a little bit of plot, enough for you to know what's going on, a big chase, and then a conclusion. It was kind of silly, but that groundhog opening it up at the end and looking at it was a nice little bookend for, here's the start, here's what we're doing, here's what you're in for, boom. And that's the opening to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
That's a good little subconscious way for the audience to be cued in that this is our introduction and now we're about to start the real story. So good call out there.
Yeah. And we're going to start this story off with a debrief with the CIA.
Classic.
So we're going to get debriefed.
Where's Porkins?
And where is Porkins? He's not here. However, we do have Neil Flynn here.
Shout out
as one
janitor
of our
from
agents.
Scrubs. He's out here.
I didn't recognize him, but the second he spoke, I was like, this guy, he's just pulling a prank on JD right now.
Yeah, he's going to give JD a hard time after this.
I do love that guys like Indiana Jones still don't get the benefit of the doubt with the CIA. You're a person of interest. Are you working with the Russians? You're like, guys, this is Indy. He's defeated the Nazis twice.
Countless adventures. Yeah.
Twice.
Well, Mac threw us for a loop because he was a double agent. So I'm sure that, and this movie is all about paranoia and nukes and Russians and spies. So I guess you could say it's on brand, but the one guy you wouldn't question, got to be Indiana Jones, but be the least you'd expect.
It would be the trickiest. But we're back to the classroom. We're back to Professor Jones. Our dean of the college comes in. He puts Indy on leave. Indy seems a little depressed. He's at home. He's sitting at his desk. He sees a picture of his dad, and it's Sean Connery. It's right there. And he talks about Marcus, how his dad and Marcus are dead. And it really looks like Indy just needs to find himself another adventure. And he's sort of looking for that. He looks like he's been looking for some purpose. I don't know. I mean, he's clearly getting chased down by Russians and
No,
kidnapped
he's
and all
hanging
this
out
stuff.
with Mac and getting kidnapped by Russians. He's good. Yeah, it's Paramount's the studio's way of shouting out Denholm Elliott and Sean Connery. Denholm Elliott actually passed away in 1992. He was battling HIV/AIDS at the time. He was actually shooting Last Crusade. He was very ill, and they would try and work around his energy levels, and he kind of powered through and soldiered on to be a prominent character in Last Crusade. And then in 1992, he succumbed to the disease, sadly. So he gets a lot of shout outs in the beginning of this movie because he was a beloved character in the franchise. Sean Connery passed away in 2020, so he's still alive at this point. I think he was just retired from acting because this was 4 years after the last appearance he did a film. And I think the role might have been just too small for him to justify coming back out. So it just didn't work out for them. But I did appreciate that.
He had those interview comments where he talked about slapping a woman. And I think that really hurt his Hollywood deal.
You just got to slap him, keep him in line.
Yeah. And then the interviewer said, well, you might want to rephrase that, right? He said, nope. He doubled down. So that didn't help his image in Hollywood. So he might have just been, hey, he's not quite worth maybe some of the publicity there, but
he gets a photo on Indiana's desk, so that we don't ignore the past. We do a little salute, head nod, and we move on.
So Indy's getting on a train because he's going to move on to his next thing, maybe teach somewhere else, and we get
maybe go on another crazy adventure.
Well, that adventure is going to find him because enter Mutt Williams, and Mutt Williams, this is played by Shia LaBeouf. And he is looking for Indy. He pulls up on his motorcycle, leather jacket. He pulls up alongside the train looking for Indy. But he brings up a name, Dr. Oxley. And that strikes a chord with Indy. He says, all right, I'll listen to this kid.
He found a crystal skull. He was looking at this mysterious lost city in the Amazon. We'll learn later it has ties to El Dorado, very loose ties. And this is the whole mission he was on. And he went a little crazy, is in the hands of some bad people. And Mutt's mom, Mary, also, spoilers, this is going to be Marion Ravenwood. And I knew that she was in this movie. So as soon as Mutt said, my mom, Mary, got kidnapped, I thought, Marion.
That's a hard part. When you know that actress is back in the movie, you go, I'm just waiting to hear the name.
Maybe they kept it a secret back in 2008, but it's very well known now that she made a return, and she's one of the hostages alongside Oxley. And Shia Mutt gives Indiana Jones a very cryptic letter. He can't decipher it, so he needs his help. And his mom, Mary, sent him to go find Indiana Jones. So that's how these two characters met.
So we're in a diner looking at this map, and we have a couple Russian stooges. I'll call them stooges because they're very oafy
I like
looking.
That. We need to use stooges more because we use goons and henchmen a lot, but they are stooges.
I like stooges. We end up escaping this diner after the Russians confront us by starting a 1950s greaser fight.
Hey, yo!
You want a piece of me? So we're going to jump on Mutt's motorcycle, and now we got a motorcycle chase. Again, it's classic Indy. We love our chases.
Shia LaBeouf did learn how to ride a motorcycle for this. They do a lot of the motorcycle camera work with Harrison on the back and Shia on a pole trailer, but they are doing a lot of it for real, which is always fun, always appreciated. It's going through the town. We're cutting off buses and cars, and it ends up back on the university campus where Indiana Jones teaches. But this chase is not over, Nick. It goes inside into the library. Mutt revs up the Harley, drives inside, and at minute 36, 19 seconds, we get our first and I think only Wilhelm scream. Except this one is a close-up of an extra, making a goofy face along with the goofy scream seem very unnatural. I thought, wow, they went diegetic with it. That was interesting. Usually it's someone falling off a cliff and you don't see them actually scream, but you got to throw it in.
You have to. Indy then, he has some of his students in that library who see him, and he makes a comment that, again, having watched all these movies this year means something to us as lovers of this franchise, He says, if you want to be a good archaeologist, you got to get out of the library.
You want to be a good archaeologist, you got to get out of the library.
And we know that in The Last Crusade, he told his students, most archaeology is done in the library. You know, you want to think it's adventure, but it's all done in the library. So nice little nod to The Last Crusade there. You know, the writers had a little bit of fun with this, especially when you're bringing back the same crew of people who know those movies inside and out. So I thought that was a nice little Easter egg.
Loved it. I caught that too. That was fun. So we do escape the Russians, and I think it's adventure time, Nick. So it's Mutt and Indy. It's the Mutt and Indy show right now. Mutt is going to be our side character, our sidekick throughout this movie. And we're going to decipher the note, and we're going to learn that the skull is going to be in Peru. They're going to be guided by the Nazca lines. I've been to Nazca. I've seen the lines. I would say you should watch them in a plane or a helicopter. Otherwise, if you go to that observatory tower off the highway, very underwhelming, very dangerous.
I don't know this for a fact, but it does appear to be. So like Jay said, so our skulls are Peru, but we get a nice classic Indy shot as we're going there. We get the transposed plane and the map at the red line going over it as we're traveling. Have to have it. It's a classic. So we get to Peru. We get to this village that Ox was last seen in, and he's not there, but he was going insane. So they threw him in a cell, and we're going to go investigate that cell. And Oxley, who's referred to as Ox throughout the movie, he's been scribbling the pictures of a madman all over his cell. And so we got to go figure out what's going on here. It's just more clues, right? And we do love clues. On the wall are these alien-looking skulls. The whole movie up to this point, Indy's doesn't have any suspicion that it's aliens. He thinks it's a native tradition, which you see in some tribes around the world, where they'll wrap the head and change the shape of the head.
They'll elongate the skull when they're infants, and yeah, this is a real thing. So there's some plausible deniability that it's not aliens, and it's in fact ancient folks from Mesoamerican cultures. So we're like, all right, we're not. I mean, they showed us the alien hand in Area 51 before, but it could have still been left up to interpretation up to this point if they didn't do that reveal in Area 51. But we're kind of on that track of, well, you showed me an alien claw. You showed me the Roswell, New Mexico, 1947. This looks like an alien skull. I'm thinking aliens, and you're kind of scaring me, Spielberg.
But the characters have deniability, right? 1957, aliens aren't quite as in the zeitgeist. That's not your first thought. So, but our clues do lead us to this grave site. So we're going to go to this grave, and we're getting this nice bonding back and forth between Indy and Mutt. And I got to say, Harrison Ford and Shia LaBeouf have some great chemistry on screen together. I actually really enjoyed their back and forth. There's a lot of Pops and Gramps comments at Harrison Ford. There's a lot of Harrison Ford saying, you still got a lot to learn, kid. I got some tricks up my sleeve. It's a good dynamic on the screen. And
I don't want to let the jokes and the zingers and, like you said, the chemistry, go like unsung, because I feel like this does a great job of carrying on the Indiana Jones style of comedy and fun, good time with those jokes and quips back and forth at each other, because Mutt comes in and he's like big tough guy greaser and says, you're just a loser, old man, grandpa, you're 80 years old and you're a teacher. And then we get attacked by these graveyard guards, and Indy holds his own because he's a G. And then after he handles business, Mutt looks at him and says, you're a teacher. And it's like like relief that we got over the conflict. And it's a funny moment.
You're a teacher? Part-time.
And these are two great performers, Shia LaBeouf and Harrison Ford. It was a interesting combo for the time. And I think it made sense at the time, but I think looking back on it, you're like, that's two very different actors and takes on creativity and artistic expression, but they're good at what they do. So I agree with you. It was a good pairing on screen, and it totally worked. But these graveyard guards, Nick, they were crazy.
I called them native ninjas.
They were like on crack. Where are these guys?
Wearing
Are
masks, screaming like spider monkeys. They were hopped up on Mountain Dew, my friend. They were going crazy. There was a part, Indy does straight murder a guy in cold blood, which is not out of character for Indy. But one of these graveyard guards has a blow dart and they're poison, and he has it aimed at Mutt. And Indy pops up, blows into the other end of this tube, and just sinks this dart into the guard's throat, killing him
backwards.
And I was thinking to myself, this reminds me a little bit of the Protectors of the Grail in Last Crusade, where
the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword.
Yeah, these guys are just doing their job. They're protecting this graveyard, trying not to have anybody desecrate it. They're not bad guys, and Indy and Mutt come in and just murder.
A couple white guys come into this low-income graveyard neighborhood and just murder some people like they have the right to.
Yeah, so I thought I was thinking, I know they may not speak the same language, but this does feel like a misunderstanding.
Could have been avoided, 100%. 100%.
But it is not avoided. And now we're going to have to go through the graves. And this is classic Indy here. We have trap doors in the graves. We have scorpions. So we have some critters. We have some weird skulls, passageways, and traps. It's very Indiana Jones. So far in this movie, again, we had some things that, like you said, some jumping the sharks, some strike.
We're on track, yeah.
But this is Indy. This is all Indiana Jones.
Track.
I'm enjoying it right now. So,
yep. I was right there with you. I had the same exact thought. I thought this is paced very, very well. We're moving. We're adventuring. We're quipping. We're trapdooring. We're taking down random guards doing their job. No problem with this so far. Let's go.
So we traverse through the graves, and we're going to find some missing adventurers. But we're going to pick up some gold coins, and all of a sudden they're going to fly to the other side of the room. Uh-oh. We have a magnetic skull. I am glad they did this because I was thinking, okay, gold's not magnetic, and there's no way Spielberg and Lucas just let that one slide. You know, gold not being magnetic. Mutt does say, wait, but gold's not magnetic. So we realize it's not a magnet. There's some other force behind this crystal skull. It's otherworldly, might we say? So we're realizing, okay, it's got some really weird properties that don't follow the laws of physics on Earth.
Otherwise, that's fake gold, and it's just metal, and it is magnetic, practically. Or, like you said, we got plausible deniability, and the skull has unexplained properties, and we have to know that going forward. So 54 minutes in, we get the crystal skull. The crystal skull looks really cool on camera. This was done by Stan Winston's company. He actually passed away in 2008 as well, so obviously they had to give him a little special thanks and in remembrance of him as this movie came out. But you'll know Stan Winston, he was Spielberg's go-to guy for special effects. And going back to a previous podcast we did, he did the dog thing for The Thing. He specifically was brought in to commission the dog thing animatronic puppet for John Carpenter's The Thing. So Stan Winston's company, not him necessarily individually involved, but his company was involved with the special effects, and they made the crystal skull, and they made the crystal skull skeletons that we'll see in the third act of the film.
Shout out, Stan Winston.
Way to go, Stan.
But as all things in Indiana Jones, once something good happens and we're on the right track, what happens, James?
So the Russians and Mac show up. Two times backstabbing Mac is back. Return of the Mac. And this is one of my nitpicks. You can't really have a treasure hunting movie without henchmen's, the big bad, a goon, some douchebag backstabber showing up conveniently right after the good guys did all the hard work. I don't know how you can avoid that, but I shout it out in every single story movie that we do that has to do with a race against clues and puzzles and good guys and bad guys. They always have to show up and steal the thing. It's part of this genre of storytelling. It's too convenient, but I don't know how you keep the bad guys involved in the same space if you don't do that. So it's a nitpick of mine.
Yeah, it is tropey, but at this point, it's tradition almost for Indy. And you're right. I don't know how unless they're always one step behind, that otherwise they'd fall off the face of the plot.
Yeah, because they're trash at puzzling.
So we're going to get dragged off further into the Amazon. We get another transposed travel shot. So 2 times. Love that. Can never get enough of that shot. It's a classic. And we're going to get interrogated by Spalko now. We're tied up. Indy is tied up. He's going to get interrogated. We get another shout out to Oppenheimer, whatever his quote is. I am now death, destroyer of worlds. Oppenheimer's I'm probably misquoting it, but
he's like, it's Oppenheimer time.
Yeah, it's Oppen time. Spalko is explaining to us how the skulls have these powers, these psychological powers that will allow the Soviet Union to conduct psychological warfare on the rest of the world. The Russians apparently already have a handful of these, like 3 or 4, she says, have already crash landed or popped up in the USSR, which I'm going to take issue with towards the end of the movie.
Eugene Boban, so it's a fraud. Not real,
it could
lady.
all be frauds. But
yeah,
now that we know it has psychological powers, her opening scene makes a lot more sense, where she thinks she has power and is trying to control Indy. We're saying, oh, okay, you got something going on. So this is where, I'm just going to throw this out here, James. This is where the movie starts to lose me a little bit. Psychological alien skull powers. I don't know why this necessarily had to be an alien skull. I think there are plenty of other artifacts you could have gone with and kept it more, quote unquote, archaeological, which is more the vein of Indiana Jones, right? Something, a precious artifact. And a crystal alien skull, I'm sitting here thinking, you really could have replaced that with a lot of different things. And the movie would have still worked without this extra question that everyone has in the back of their head of alien skull psychological powers. I don't know. What do you think?
Speculating. I think this is going back to the spitball nature of Spielberg and Lucas, when Lucas said, 19 years later, what was hot back then? Sci-fi B movies, a lot of alien movies. Oh, Roswell, New Mexico happened. Oh, we can tie that in with Mesoamerican culture because people have conspiracy theories that aliens visited ancient Aztec or Mayan regions and tribes, and they were involved in building of structures and blah, blah, blah. I think they got too much in the wrong bag and just took an idea and said, yes, let's run with that, and we're going to go with it. I think that if that's how it went down, that is mistake from the starting line. I think you got to go with something else because it was so shark jumpy. And whether George Lucas was telling the truth and saying, yeah, it was supposed to be like a sci-fi cheesy movie, or if it was backpedaling, I think either way, someone's got to lean in. Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall, you got to lean in and say, yo, aliens are not it for Indiana Jones. You got to leave that out. You have to make it anything else, please. But no, we go for aliens. And I'll tell you what, Nick, I knew there was aliens in this movie. I knew people hated it because that was a big reason of why people didn't like the movie. But I thought, even if it was aliens, I just thought, please do not show me an alien by the end of this movie. I think at this part, they had a dead alien corpse. And I thought, okay, like it would have been a lot better if it was all conspiracy theory and speculation from the bad guys and they were just honestly crazy and it wasn't actually aliens, but you can leave it up to interpretation. But I thought, please, by the end of this movie, do not show me an alien because it's going to take me out of it, because I don't associate outer space aliens with 1930s jungle globetrotting Indiana Jones. I don't associate the two. So please don't do that.
So you weren't a fan of Cowboys vs. Aliens?
Never seen it. I'm sure that would be fun because they're coming out plain and simple saying, yeah, it's Cowboys versus Aliens, but this is an established character, 3 movies deep. It's been about historical artifacts that have some sort of truth behind them. And they've done it where it's not supposed to be 100% sincere and believable, but this one was a little shark jumpy. And this is our second shark jumped when we got an alien corpse and psychological powers. Nothing that we haven't seen from Indiana Jones before. We've seen mythical powers. Ark of the Covenant wipes everybody out. Holy Grail, invisible bridges. Nothing that we haven't seen before. But this was like,
we have mind control in Temple of Doom, right? Like, it's not crazy to say these other artifacts can have the same effects.
Yeah, it was just a little bit out of the genre for Indiana Jones, which is the bad chord that I think was struck with many moviegoers, I'll say.
Mole Rom, better than Aliens. Throwing it out there.
Mac's also trying to cut a deal with Indiana Jones, so you're like, oh, he's a double agent, so he's back on our side. So he's secretly gonna join our team again. So we're like, all right, cool, Mac's cool again. For now.
Indy is in our boat. He's refusing to entertain the notion of the aliens. But we do find Oxley. Ox is here at their Amazon camp, and he's gone straight insane. The skull has driven him insane.
Crazy.
It has driven him to straight madness, which we knew after seeing his jail cell. So the skull does have some crazy powers, and the Russians are going to use it on Indiana Jones. And they think it's going to let him communicate with Ox because it creates mind portals. Nothing's explained here. And honestly, it looks like Indy's not affected. And spoiler alert, him staring into the skull's eyes in this big climactic moment that's supposed to mean something will not come into play the rest of the movie. He does not gain some extra knowledge. He does not gain any powers. It's just a thing that happens. That's a tough one for me. Along with Ox at this camp, we're going to find Mutt's mom, Mary. She's here, and this is the reveal, James. Who's Mary?
It's Marianne Ravenwood, a.k.a. Marianne Williams, because she married some guy named Colby or Coben or Kobe Williams. And Karen Allen is back. She makes her first reappearance to the franchise since the inception of this franchise with Raiders of the Lost Ark. And she's back. We all saw it coming. She's Mutt's mom. There's another kind of callback line here where Indiana Jones says, oh, you just had to go and get yourself kidnapped. Same old, same old. And I was like, ha, because she was always kidnapped in Raiders. She always got sidelined for the action.
I thought it was a good reveal, and we talked about it in Temple, where there was a discussion of whether you bring Marion back, even though I guess it was a prequel, but they knew each other in Raiders. So was Marion going to be the love interest throughout Indy's life? And they obviously decided not to do that. So this had to feel pretty good for Spielberg and Lucas to be able to say, hey, we always wanted Marion to still be a part of the Indyverse, as we'll call it. So I like that she was back. I think it was a really good move. Ox is communicating again, and he's given us some more clues. He says 3 times it drops, and he's speaking in riddles, which we're used to for Indy. Things are happening, and then all of a sudden, our boy Mutt, he makes a move. And this reminds me of a young Indy. This is like a young Indy.
I appreciate this. He alpha dogs the situation and bum rushes the map table as we're going over the game plan from the big bads, because the big bads always have to explain their plan and say, hey, we're going to go in here, we're going to do this. And Mutt just says, flipping tables and bum rushing fools. I'm a greaser, baby. Let's jam. Let's get out of here.
He does grease it up.
Yes. Why don't people just do this more often in movies? Just flip a table and run out.
That's what he did.
So they escape and they run into what, Nick?
I say quicksand, but Indy likes to correct everybody and say it's a dry sand pit.
Well, actually, it's a dry sand pit. So
hits him with the well, actually.
We shout out quicksand in the movies, and I'm glad it's making a return, because we said it's usually going to show up in those 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s movies. But since this is based on a classic franchise, we have a classic trap trope. We have quicksand, aka a dry sand pit. And I think I need to rescind my Mad Max nitpicks about the quicksand, because my beef with the Thunderdome quicksand and the Furiosa quicksand was that it was too dry and too fast. But these could have been the same types of dry sand pits that they face in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So I thought that was funny that we get a real life scientific explanation of the difference. But classic movie trope, quicksand, dry sand, Indy stuck, Marion stuck. And this is where we learn for realsies that Mutt is Indiana Jones's son. So not really a huge twist. We all saw it coming. We all knew that was going to be the case.
And I'm glad they didn't play out the reveal, right? We saw Marion. We went to escape. It's about 5 minutes after we meet Marion that she tells Indy this. So it wasn't this weird thought for the audience. They told us pretty quick, and I appreciate it.
So he says, Mutt, go get something to pull us out with, thinking he's going to go get a rope or a vine, better much. We'll see vines later. But he comes back with a snake. And what does Indiana Jones hate? He hates snakes. And this gives us a nice crowd-pleasing laugh for the whole family. Meanwhile, he sends Ox to go get help, and Ox is a little crazy and stupid. He says, go get help. Ox says, help. Indiana Jones says, help. Ox says, help. And then runs away like a loser idiot. And then they get out of the dry sand pit via the snake after a funny interaction joke. And the Russians show up because dumbass Ox got help from the Russians. Wah, wah, we're captured again. So Indiana Jones, Mutt, and Marion are all captured. They're in the back of a truck. There is this tree chopping truck leading the way. It's trailblazing, just straight ruining this rainforest of this jungle. And my wife, Emily, she caught a Star Wars Easter egg sound clip. Sounds like a TIE fighter blaster as part of the tree chopping mechanics. They snuck it in there. I feel like they do this with every movie. We always hear the Millennium Falcon sound effect on airplanes or a blaster sound or something. Not the first, not the last Star Wars Easter egg we'll see in this movie. But they are doing the classic arguing in the back as a distraction. We saw this with Henry Jones Sr. and Indiana Jones in Last Crusade, the very last movie we watched in this franchise. And they're going to overpower the one guard.
Indy pulls out an RPG. So that's always
RPG,
great.
gentlemen.
RPG, gentlemen!
And now we get another chase scene. This time it's going to be through the jungle to retrieve the skull. We have some shenanigan-filled fights. Marion gets concussed by a branch.
Oh, my God. That was so funny to me.
What? Disengage!
And I thought she was going to go out, but she's still driving. She's still semi-conscious.
We have a sword fight between Mutt and Spalko.
Spalko's pretty sick with it, with the sword, and throws a hard punch to Mutt's ribs. And then later she actually throws a high kick over her head, and she kicks Mutt's face behind her. So she's looking pretty badass here. A lot of nut shots, a lot of sword fights, clang, clang, and swashbuckling.
There's that classic scene where Mutt is standing between the two trucks as they're driving side by side.
When he's doing the Jean-Claude Van Damme move, yeah.
Yeah, and there's plants hitting him in the nuts. You know, just some classic. We learn Mac is CIA, but what's always remembered about this scene, James, this chase scene, Mutt gets left behind.
Yeah, he gets tossed from the car. He kind of just shoots up in the air and then grabs a tree branch or a vine. And monkeys pull up to the scene.
Tarzans. He just becomes Tarzan, James. I don't know what else to say.
I knew this was a... Now, is this a shark being jumped? Because for me, not really.
It's a half.
Indiana Jones. It's jumping the fish here. But Indiana Jones is known for outrageous, unrealistic physics and chase scenes, and we're supposed to just eat some popcorn and enjoy it. But it did look a little goofy. I feel like this is where the CGI kind of bit Crystal Skull in the behind. It looked a little funny.
Now, in a classic Indy, you'd see him going on the vines, but being uncomfortable, maybe a little clumsy, right? He sort of figures it out. Yeah, but not Mutt. He is stretching out like he's doing Olympic, like on the Olympic rings. I got this. He has got the core strength of an Olympian. So might not be a jump the shark scene, but it's a scene that people remember and go, bad movie.
Negative points. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the monkeys and Mutt catch up to the caravan. This is also kind of adds to the clunkiness of the scene and how it plays out, because Mutt gets left way behind and he catches up by vine swinging. And you're like, okay, did he go in a straight line and they were going on a slow U-turn next to the cliff edge? You're kind of lost and you're like, where are we geographically where are we in relation to other characters? It's a little bit messy with the setting here. But they catch up, and the monkeys freaking hate Spalko. They start fighting her because they made friends with Mutt instantaneously because he was a vine guy.
This guy swings. This guy swings on vines. This is my guy. I will die
cool.
for this man.
He's cool. Fuck this lady.
And I noticed this during the chase. The car is an amphibious vehicle, so I'm thinking we're going to have to go off a cliff. We're going to have to go off a cliff. So we're in a river, and what's in every river, James? In an adventure
waterfall.
movie?
This actually I thought was very funny because we had Ox saying it drops 3 times, and they do the first drop in the waterfall, and they say that's it, it's a waterfall. They say, and Marion's like, what? Indiana Jones is like, 3 times. We're gonna do this 3 times. That was the first one. Here comes the second
3
one.
times it
and
drops.
then we're gonna do it a third one. That was like classic, over the top, but I'm totally in it. I'm buying it. That was funny. That was classic Jones comedy right there.
I agree.
So they go down the waterfalls, and they are now being told via the skull to return home, because that's been the thing this whole time, that it needs to return. They've been shouting out return this entire time.
So we go in this cave. We see a bunch of pictures on the wall. They're really hammering home that these are aliens. They came down to help the natives build aqueducts. This is, I guess, the excuse for cities like El Dorado, these mythical cities that were ahead of its time. There were aliens. But our native ninjas, our grave guards, our boys are back.
This different faction of grave guards is crazy. They're on screen for about a minute, 2 minutes, and they had tons of extras coming in with special effects makeup, all those like scars and beads that looked like they were burnt raised skin. Those were all applied to these 50 extras. They're on a big practical set. They are blue screening the background. There's a lot of appreciated filmmaking going on with the Jones movies. Even though they did a lot more CGI, they're not phoning a lot of the stuff in. They're still using practical sets. They're using miniature sets. The Nuketown was actually a miniature. So we do get a lot of Spielberg magic behind the scenes. And it's crazy. They busted out of these breakaway rock walls in the cave initially, so those were super fragile.
But those panels themselves have all been made as very fragile breakaways, so we have to carry those things around very carefully, because there's approximately 14 hours worth of work that's gone into each one of these panels, and one false move and they could break.
Don't want to undersell the movie magic going to work here. Crazy old Ox got the crystal skull, and they are no longer a problem, and they are just going to go move along to their final destination here, and they got to solve a puzzle to get into the final chamber to return this skull.
They have to go down these retracting stairs. So we had some traps and some trap doors and some puzzles, but a good indie trap has some suspense behind it, and it puts you on a time clock and is a little chaotic. So yeah, we had some retracting stairs, good classic indie stuff. In the meantime, Mac has dropped a GPS beacon for our Russians. So now we're thinking it's a triple cross. Mac can't be.
He's a triple crosser.
And outside, the Russians have gunned down all of our natives, all of our graveyard guards. So we're gearing up for our final showdown, and we're going to find our way, James, here to the final chamber.
Yeah, the impressive set building and the mechanics that we have going on, because there's practical moving puzzle doors and obelisks that come up. And a lot of this final act set was built for realsies, and it was really cool. It was really interesting to watch those behind the scenes, how they did it. And of course, there's some Star Wars Easter eggs in here. So just like in Raiders, when C-3PO and R2-D2 were engraved on the map room for the Ark of the Covenant, they got a lot of these tiles that are supposed to represent stories and images of the history of whatever kingdom this is, the kingdom of the Crystal Skull, apparently. And there's a E.T. engraving and R2-D2 and a C-3PO in there. Very hard to catch. I didn't catch it.
That. Yeah.
No, it's impossible to catch, but it's in there. Got to throw it in. Got to do Easter eggs to the Spielberg history of his contributions to Hollywood. So it's there. It's an Indiana Jones staple. And this is going to be our final showdown. And we're returning the skull. The skull automatically jumps to its skeleton body. Is that what happens?
Yeah, well, we enter this chamber. It looks like the Jedi Council room. It's a bunch of alien skeletons sitting in a giant circle, all with their heads except for one. You're right, James. They take it over to that last skeleton missing the head. It reattaches like a magnet. Maybe it's magnetized to that. So they return the head, and all of a sudden, this room starts to go crazy. Spalko wants unlimited knowledge, wants to know everything.
They show
Indy,
up, by the way, because of the frickin' GPS trackers that frickin' Mac put down.
Like the whole audience is thinking, but it's really good coming from Harrison Ford because it's a Han Solo line. He says,
I've got a bad feeling about this.
I want to know everything. I want to know.
The alien room starts going nuts. The walls are breaking away. Spalko's getting this knowledge beams into her head, like she's sitting in that chair from Battlefield Earth, just getting beamed with knowledge.
Beam blast.
And James, you said, please don't show me an alien. Well, here comes the infamous alien scene for the movie.
Now, they don't technically call them aliens or extraterrestrials. They call them interdimensional beings. Ox, he pulls out, well, actually, they're interdimensional beings, as a matter of fact. So
yeah, he gets uncrazied after the head's returned. He's back to normal.
Yeah, he is unferal now. But yeah, we get CGI alien. They kind of, speaking of Star Wars, they kind of look like, the physiology of them looks like the aliens of Camino. They're very tall and lanky and skinny. But yeah, I was really hoping, please don't show me an alien. And if you do, don't make them animated CGI, because these 13 skeletons and skulls, the room starts spinning and they start morphing into each other, and the more skeletons, just like the Rock King, the Gnome King from Return to Oz last time we did this. The more souls he snatched, the more human he became. So the more the skeletons and skulls line up with each other on the spinning room, it adds to the biology of this unified being, and it becomes a live action alien. It's pretty. This is big. This is big shark jump right here. This is 100% jump in the shark.
This is cardinal sin shark jump. This is what, if anybody was still in this movie, this did it.
I was okay with allusions to aliens and like not actually showing them, but once you showed it, it's like, feels like it doesn't belong in an Indiana Jones movie. But we went there. Nick, I see you wrote down here, the movie killer.
It's true. In this movie, this is what folks remember. It's this scene. It's that alien reveal. It's such a turnoff. And when you have a scene like this, it is all people will remember. It's all I remembered. It's why I didn't like this movie. And I had to go back and rewatch it for this podcast. And I'm thinking to myself, this was so fun up to this point. Why did we do this?
Right. And it kind of goes back to all horror movies that we've watched, or alien movies. I remember when we talked about M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, for me, the funnest part was the mystery, and we never saw the aliens. And then you get it at the very end. And it's appropriate for that movie, obviously. But for this one, I felt like you could have just teased us the whole time, and we didn't necessarily need to see any aliens. We could have just saw some crazy drama play out amongst the characters, some family dynamic come to play like we had with Last Crusade. That was more interesting to me than the Holy Grail. I just love seeing Sean Connery and Harrison Ford's father-son relationship develop on screen, and the hijinks and the action was all bonus. But this one, we're really relying on the outrageous things that happen in the movie, and I felt like we didn't have to do that. So it was very much like they're gonna love this, and it's gonna be a big crazy reveal at the end, but definitely had an opposite effect on audiences, and it's tough. But
it is. So let's wrap this up, because Spalko, death by knowledge.
Hate that. That's why I never studied in school.
Indy does try to save Mac. The whole place is collapsing, And I think this may be the first time Indy busts out his whip. I think there was a very glaring lack of whip action from Indiana Jones. The whole temple explodes. There's a spaceship buried underneath this temple, and it's just going to sort of yeet off, but not to space. Oxley tells us they're going to the space between spaces. So they're interdimensional beings. They're not even aliens.
We have a crossover brewing with Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension.
Which would also then connect Oppenheimer into that world.
That'd be nuts. So. Buckaroo Oppenheimer. I have to say something. The flying saucer effect. Here's one of my nitpicks, though.
Nitpicks.
Indiana Jones, get the hell away from that cliff, dude. You're going to get freaking smacked with one of those big-ass rocks that's swirling around.
They're like 10 feet in front of them.
They're like 200 feet wide. Nitpick there. Get out of there. Don't watch this. We'll leave that to us, the audience. We will watch it for you. But I have to say, it disappears pretty cool. I thought the CGI looked really good, and I liked it's not a reveal. It's like the opposite of a reveal because it goes away. If this was an alien movie, full on sci-fi, I thought it looked really cool. But again, it's taking me out of it because I feel like it just doesn't. It's like putting orange juice as your milk for cereal. It's not what you do. You can, but
you just don't do it. And then Indy hits us with, this was supposed to be El Dorado, the land of treasure. And he says, knowledge was their treasure. Like, you didn't get any knowledge. The only person who got knowledge was Spalko, and she basically disintegrated.
I'm just catching this now, but I will tie it into the running bit that Mutt dropped out of school. And Indiana Jones says, you don't have to go to school, do whatever you want. And then when he figures out that he's his son, he says,
why the hell didn't you make him finish school?
That kind of ties up that little running bit with knowledge is power. And that's the real treasure. This movie subconsciously is saying, stay in school.
Not the worst message. So Indy and Marion are going to reconcile. We get a fun callback for his dad. Indy calls Mutt Jr., right? Which is what Indy hates being called. Mutt then burns his dad because Indy says, Mutt wants to leave. So let's go back to the village. Indy says, no, it's too dark. You don't want to be out in the dark. Why don't you just stick around? And then he looks and says, why didn't you stick around, Dad? Like, whoa.
Throwing sick burns already. Our epilogue is going to include Indiana Jones and Marion finally getting married. And Ox is actually here at the wedding, and he was unrecognizable. I thought he was just a featured extra with speaking lines, but he's been this feral, hobo-looking ass, crazy guy this whole movie. But he's clean-shaven. He's at the wedding, and they say, thanks for everything, Ox. And I was like, oh, I did not know that was him, but okay. I thought it was like a crazy uncle. They get married. They kiss. They're walking down the aisle. Some mysterious wind, just like we saw in Last Crusade. The wind is right on time. It's right on cue, blowing in the hat, in the frame. It blows right to Mutt. He's about to pick up the hat and put it on, and we're all getting that feeling, oh, are they teasing the continuation of the Indiana Jones franchise with Shia LaBeouf? But just like reality, Harrison Ford takes the hat, puts it on his head, and we get the John Williams Indiana Jones theme song as we leave the church, and we are done. That is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull from 2008. What a ride. Nick, now, like I said, during the plot, evolution of effects. So I always found there was very special things when you're movie making and they had to do these crazy things in order to pull off these crazy practical stunts. But a lot of the behind the scenes stuff I looked up with this movie was how they did most things in CGI, or how the computers made things safer. Harrison Ford, being 19 years older, was still able to do a lot of his own stunts because the stunt technology became a lot safer. So do you think we're missing anything here with the inclusion of CGI? Do you think it was too much? Did you think it brought you out of it? I felt like this was the time in cinema where we could reliably rely on CGI and think we can do anything. Do you think that contributed to any jumping the shark moments, or they got too big for their britches because they said, we can do anything. We can do aliens. We can do a nuclear explosion. We can do whatever we want with computers.
Yeah, I think the CGI advancements contributed to two scenes that are hated and scar this movie, and that is the vine swinging from Shia LaBeouf, and it is the alien reveal at the end. I think CGI had made it. I think it emboldened them to do those two things. And without CGI and without the ability to do those two things, I think they would have taken a different approach, which would have made for a better movie. So I think this is a great example of just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
Let me hit you with this. Is there a scene that you can think of from the original 3 that if they did CGI, it would be worse than doing it practically? I have one, because there's been a lot of outrageous things that have happened. And the example I'm thinking of is in Temple of Doom, when they jump out of the plane and they're in the raft. They sent out a raft IRL. I think there were some mannequins, some dummies in it. It slams on the ground, and we're all thinking they'd be dead in an instant from that. But they actually filmed a raft falling from the plane, and then they pick it up and fade it in with live action actors, and they're in the river. But I feel like if they were to do that with CGI, they might take the liberty of, oh, we can be in the raft with them as they're falling through the air. And I feel like that makes it, it's a lot more artificial because it would be a green screen, and it would be blaringly obvious that it was a green screen. So are there effects or stunts in the previous 3 movies that if you thought, oh, if they did it with CGI, it would look worse, or we're okay buying it because we're supposed to suspend our disbelief?
I mean, there's a ton of great stuff that happened in the original trilogy. Recency bias, but Last Crusade, the fight on top of the tank, right? And we loved that scene. We thought it was great. It was innovative. You're fighting on top of a tank. It's moving. And this is really happening in the movie. And it adds a lot more, CGI. And that's part of the problem with the aliens, is that everything in Indy, as crazy and fantastical as it is not out of the question as far as believability and reality. I'll go back to the first scene we ever saw Indiana Jones in Raiders, with the big paper mache rock that was falling down. That was so cool because it was such a big rock. That is, you can't simulate how gravity, you can try, but how gravity is going to make something roll and come at you and not be 100% square, and an actor running away from a real thing versus pretending to run away from something, that there's something a little more special. So I think there's a lot of things in the original trilogy that, even a lot of the traps that they find themselves in, right? As you're walking through these dangerous tight spaces, if that's all CGI, the rats, the spiders, the snakes, the things that were trained specifically for the movie to get those actual reactions from the actors, spiders on your back. There's actually rats down here. You're actually surrounded by snakes. That would have all been CGI, right? In today's day and age. And so I think almost everything from the original trilogy. There's a few things in Temple of Doom that could have been made better, right? Some of those sets, Mole Ram.
Oh, like a couple plane crashes
kind of stuff
in Temple and Last Crusade. We thought, this is not as impressive as what would be done today. So there's definitely improvements to be had if the old trilogy had CGI technology, but there's definitely pitfalls that come with CGI. So there's certain things where CGI just makes sense and you don't need to go to great lengths to sell an effect. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum where it's a little bit too much of a downfall on your project because you're relying too much on it. And it's glaringly obvious.
A little bit of a crutch sometimes.
Speaking of glaringly obvious CGI and a little bit of a crutch, let's talk about them aliens.
Yeah, so James, I have a question for you. We don't have to dwell on this, but I want to ask I'm going to give you some background, ask you a question, and just have you give me your best thought. Just give me a theory off the top of your head. So we have this Council of Aliens chamber, and we don't know if it's a single alien that splits off his body or 12 aliens, but we know apparently these aliens have died and it's just their bones there. We also know that the plane that crashed, the reason it's in this government storage facility is because these aliens crashed in Roswell and we got the skull. And we also know that there's been 3 or 4 others that have crashed in the USSR that Spalco has told us about. So we know the aliens don't just exist in the Amazon, but there's all these skulls laying around. So what happened to these aliens and how did they all die? And why are their skulls able to be stolen? Are they stupid?
Yeah, I think when I first saw the aliens and we jumped the shark and I didn't check out of the movie, but I thought, okay, hard to follow. Don't know the logistics, don't know what the hell's going on. But now you say that. So the final chamber has like what, 12, 13 alien skeletons?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there's 13. 12 of them have a head. So the 13th head, that was recovered from the grave in Peru, right?
Yeah, that forget the guy's name, but that adventurer stole.
So what was the one in Area 51?
We never saw it again. I think the Russians just took it.
The one that was in Area 51, let's say they were looking for crystal skulls. Were they just hoping that the one that crashed in New Mexico in 1947 was carrying a crystal skull, and then they were going to place it onto the ancient skeleton that has been there for hundreds of years?
As far as we know, they just wanted to collect as many as they could so that they could make a giant psychological warfare weapon.
Oh, so they didn't know about this chamber because the skull communicated with Ox and said, return me.
Yes.
Okay. So the alien, so here's what I'll say. Here's my theory. 13 aliens. One got his head chopped off by a greedy guy. Let's just call him Eugene Bobon. Just making up names over here. And Eugene, quote unquote, stole it and said, hey, I'm going to go sell this because your head's made of crystal. This is super sick. But these hive mind aliens and their corpses, their interconnecting spirits, they made Eugene go crazy, and then he took his head away, but it's a head. It doesn't have legs. What is this? John Carpenter's The Thing? Just going to sprout spider legs and walk away? No. So it gets stuck in a gravesite, and these 12 other aliens are so stubborn. They're like, we're going to literally wait here until someone returns that head. We have to sit in these chairs because we can't leave the council for whatever reason. So I think they just waited it out until they died, and they were through a hive mind. They were trying to have chosen ones and people they would choose to communicate with, retrieve the skull, return the skull so that they can finally go home. I think they were just coming to Earth and they just wanted to stop by, check on their Mesoamerican homies. But then one of them got their heads chopped off, and then they waited there until it got returned. Once it finally got returned, they were all dead, but somehow they have the power to morph into one. It is Morbin Morphin time, bringing it back. And they become one alien and say, here's some knowledge, lady. Peace.
And the other handful of skulls that are on Earth, do you think they came to Earth to try and help their homies and then also
maybe it was a misdelivery? They tried to Amazon Uber Eats some skulls to the Mesoamerican temple, but misdelivery. They don't have quite the right address, got delivered to the wrong house. So they kept sending crystal skulls down from not another planet, as we know, but from the space in between spaces, aka the 8th dimension.
But we know there was a live one that crashed in Roswell, right? That was in that mummified corpse. So I want to.
So was that like a scout? Yeah, maybe he was sent like, oh, we're going to the Soviet Union. This is the wrong area. Let me go check out the Americas, and I'll let you know where to deliver the new heads.
Also, the Ruskies still apparently have 3 to 5 of these skulls, according to Spalko. So,
how about you? How do you think they died? Or what? How about what the hell? That's my question.
That's a great question. So I think what the hell is that George Lucas and Spielberg got over their skis and they didn't realize the plot holes. And when they got called out on it, they said, it's just a B movie sci-fi. Guys, it's just what it is. So I don't think there's a good reason for this, because if it was just the original skull in the Amazon that had to get returned, I'm super down for your theory. Super down for your theory where they are a hive mind, and once you got one of them, the rest of them, they can't survive without all of them. But the alien at Area 51 and the other alien heads that Spalko says that they have, which she has experience with these, so I'm inclined to believe her, that throws a wrench in this whole thing. So are there multiple temples? Are the natives from
unless she's
around the
bullshitting,
world?
She could be lying.
Well, she comes in with the mind control, and she knows how to use the one that they have, and she knows to look for an alien skull. She knows to look for an alien skull and what it's capable of. So, but even still, the Area 51 alien still throws a wrench in this because he's not part of the Amazons. So, I don't know.
Going back to what you said about George Lucas and Spielberg spitballing BSing, SBing and BSing over there. I think that was another gripe I had with the movie. I think they had too many loose connections and they tried to force them together through some BS narrative, because we had aliens. We had, Mesoamerican cultures used to elongate their skulls, so we can tie that in. Oh, what's also in South America? El Dorado. Let's tie in El Dorado. Oh, Roswell, New Mexico, the crash that happened, time period accurate to when we want to have this take place. We can tie that in. Oh, the Ark of the Covenant. That could be in Area 51. How about that's where that big warehouse was with the top men? Let's do that. Let's tie that in. I think it was too much excitement over a couple scattered ideas, and they tried to force glue it together. And I think the product showed that it fell apart at the end. The glue did not hold together.
I agree.
It's time for our mini pops, our mini awards. And Nick, we're going to start out with the best weapon. What do you think the best weapon was in this movie?
So it doesn't have a high kill count, but I have to go with the skull. I think it's a good iconic part of this movie. It scares the shit out of the natives.
What the hell does it do?
Well, it scares the natives to know, and it turns people into insane folks. The only thing with a kill count in this movie is machine guns, and I just don't feel like that's a good best weapon nominee.
If you want to hear my nominations, I'm going very practical here. I'm going with the Graveyard Guard's blow dart or Mutt's switchblade. None of them killed anybody. None of them killed anybody.
No, the blow dart did claim a victim thanks to Indy blowing the dart back into the Guardian Guard. So.
Now, do you have to use it in reverse? Do you have to blow it back into someone's throat?
As far as we know, yeah, because that's the only way it works.
So it's an anti-weapon. So let's go with the Graveyard Blow Dart. Nick, that is going to transition pretty nicely into my Best Fighter nominations. Again, Indiana Jones is throwing down. He's already in the gauntlet, however, via Last Crusade and other movies he's shown up in. So if we need to crown a new fighter, I was actually going to nominate the Nazca Grave Guards because they were just crazy spider monkeys. They threw hands. They were acrobatic. They were agile. Only other guy I could throw up there is Mutt, very ready to get his hands dirty, bum rushed the table, punched a few guys, sword fighting with Spalko. Who'd you have bringing to the Thunderdome?
I was going to have to go with Indy again. He's still a brawler.
He's still a brawler. He's still a baller, but he's in. He's in. So we got to pick someone new.
That's the hard part. Well, let's go with Mutt. Let's go with his protege. Because you're right.
Williams?
The sword fighting, it's not fighting, but the pure strength, the body
Aggro.
strength to swing through the jungle is massive. And he's willing to throw down, which is part of the criteria for me. So Mutt Williams is going to be our best fighter from this movie.
All right, let's go. Henry Jones the Third, you are in. Now, is he going to be your most valuable character? Because that's our next award coming up. Who you have nominated?
Most valuable character for me in this movie, going to go with somebody a little more on the fringe here and go with Oxley. I think he was very important to the story. He added some great comedic parts to this. Yeah, I'm gonna nominate Oxley.
Yeah, I was struggling with this one because it's an Indiana Jones movie. Mutt's a featured character. Marion comes back. The villain's not really anything driving the plot. I feel like I would probably vote for Oxley as well.
Switching gears, doing a full 180 from your most valuable character to your biggest piece of shit.
Easily Mac. Mac sucks.
It's Mac. Absolutely. The triple cross.
Easy Mac. Like this does not belong to the Russian henchman. This does not belong to Spalko. This belongs to Mac, the backstabbing Mac bastard attack over there. Being a bitch. Oh, he died, by the way.
Yeah, he died.
We didn't even call it out, but he got sucked in by his greed. The spaceship force sucked him in somewhere. He got sucked because he sucked.
All right, James, I see you got one more award
Best
to give
yeet.
out here.
Yeah. My nomination for Best Yeet, it's got to go to the Fridge Yeet. Straight yeeting out of Nuketown and surpassing the Russian car trying to escape, which just gets incinerated by radiation and nuclear bomb blast. But the Fridge, yeeting out of Nuketown.
Yay!
All right, Nick. Well, that's our awards. Let's wrap up our talking points, our talking heads with some sarcastic selling points. I simply said Indiana Jones and aliens.
Yeah, it's a good one. I said all the Indy beats with sloppy execution.
Final review. Fight.
Final review time. It's time to look at what the other guys are saying about this movie, and we will share what we think about this movie. We're going to start out with Rotten Tomatoes. The critics, 77% of the critics thought this was a 70% movie. I think they're going off the nostalgia.
Yeah, the people did not have the nostalgia feeling. They came in at a 53%.
All right, a little bit more realistic there. Moving over to Metacritic, the average weighted reviews of reviews that came out at the time, 65 out of 100. Translate to a 6.5 on our popcorn scale.
All right, and the people, again, being lower than the critics here, coming in at a 5.8. So not as much of a chasm as Rotten Tomatoes, but the people were still not as enamored with the movie as the critics were.
And now our fridge eaten, Russian beaten, alien meeting, Crystal Skull skeeting score from IMDb, a 6.2. Woo! Was the Crystal Skull taking charge there? Because we just had a hive mind saying
psychological
that.
warfare on this podcast because they're all up in our heads.
Nick, it is our turn to stamp this movie with our laughable log lines, our popcorn points, our final thoughts. And it's my turn to go first. So I'm going to hit you with my laughable log line. I said, Indiana Jones is back. The Nazis are now Russians. The treasure is now knowledge. And the sidekicks are now family by law. And I'm giving this a 6.7. So I knew going in, this was not going to be a good movie. However, I feel like we still hit a lot of the proper Indiana Jones beats, a lot of the proper Indiana Jones comedy, but it falls below a 7. 7, I think, is an acceptable movie, and we're in the greens. We're in good hands. I felt very entertained by this movie the whole time. It is a huge departure, but I do rate this higher than Temple of Doom, actually. I gave Temple of Doom a 6.1. I thought that was too much of a departure in the wrong direction, but this movie did give me some enjoyments. It's a tick above the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants for reference. And I thought they tried something new. They tried something different. And I'm glad that this is not the last Indiana Jones movie, but I felt like the movie making techniques were still there. The Spielberg charm was still there. The chemistry was there. The actors were good. But the inclusion of aliens, I felt like it was a bit much. Not something that I'm going to ward off the movie or say these guys made it with bad intentions. I thought everybody was very excited to come back and revisit the character in the world of Indiana Jones. But I still was entertained throughout this movie. I don't think it stuck the landing, though. So I'm going to give it a 6.7.
So 6.7 from you, huh? All right. Well, James, here's what I said. I said, Indy is back, and it feels like Indy, but it just ain't. That sounds harsh, but I'm giving this a 6.8.
Wow.
The skull is working on us, my friend. We're right there in that same vein. I agree with all of...
Based on your physical reaction, I thought you were going to tank this.
No,
honestly.
It's really hard, and there's a reason I gave this a 6.8. The reason I gave it a 6.8 is this is the exact same rating that I gave to Daredevil. And I think this falls into the same trap from viewers that a movie like Daredevil does. This is good. It's fun. It's still Indiana Jones, the adventures, the John Williams music, the traps, the puzzles, the banter, the comedy, the chase scenes. It's still all there, but they had these moments that just really turned the audience off, like Daredevil, like I mentioned before. And that's really hard to get over for an audience. And this will not be able to be remembered as another great installment in the franchise because of those moments. The aliens ding it, obviously the scenes, the crystal skull, the alien reveal, the swinging on vines. Those are tough. Those sear in your brain. And I forgot after I saw this movie about all the other fun stuff that this movie has to offer. The fan service, the callbacks in the writing, in the dialogue. It's Indiana Jones through and through. They just screwed the premise up a bit. And I think you said something when we were talking about the skulls that really, really hit. And it's why this movie can't hit the sevens. And you had mentioned The Last Crusade, how we didn't really care about the artifact. We cared about the adventure and the relationships that were forged with forgetting that artifact. This felt too alien-centric. It did not feel like the adventure superseded the actual artifact that we were using as the crux of our plot. So that's a bad trap to fall into. If it was an actual artifact instead of aliens and there was no alien reveal, this is high sevens, low eights
Easy
every day
sevens.
of the week.
Yeah,
easy
easy sevens.
But
aliens is a hard sell for us.
Yeah, so it's a 6.8. It's definitely better than Temple, but it is not better than Last Crusade or Raiders.
I'm shocked you gave it a 6.8 because the way you're looking at me, it looked like you thought it was crazy and you were going to hit it with a 4 or a 5. Did you have that written down originally?
I did. It was always gonna match Daredevil after I saw this, but I was trying to do the old classic Mac triple cross on you.
Oh,
you never know where I'm coming from, so I had to give you the face, to say, wow, but it was always a 6.8 for me, and I think it deserves a 6.8. And if you can get past the alien part of it, it's a really fun,
it's a good Indiana Jones
movie. It is,
and what it delivers. The aliens are just the big point deductor there. So that's shocking. Okay, so the Crystal Skull is working its magic on you and on me. We have very similar scores. I'm shocked. And a lot of people count this as the worst Indiana Jones movie, but it seems like you and I individually and as a team agree Temple of Doom is the worst.
Temple of Doom is a much larger departure, like you said, from the Indy brand than this movie is. The premise just isn't good.
Crazy.
But
this one had fucking aliens in it. It's closer.
But it was you were dark and in a cave
to what we're expecting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane. That is nuts. Well, on that bombshell, it's time to end the show. So
we got something to do,
before
James.
we go, We usually drop hints for what we're going to be watching next week on the podcast, but it is now that time of the year where we have a spinning wheel. Yeah, we have a couple of these throughout the year. We have a Best Picture winner spinning wheel, and for no reason at all around Labor Day, we have a spinning wheel of Disney Channel original movies. Nick, it looks like there's 100 or so movies on here. So previously last year, we landed on Horse Sense, and by default, we ended up watching the sequel to that, Jumping Ship. So let's see what we got. We got everything from the inception of Disney Channel original movies all the way up till Camp Rock, because they have too many. And I don't know how much I can get into it past 2008. But, Nick, are you ready to spin the wheel and decide our fate of what we're watching next week?
I've never been more ready. Let's do this.
Let's do this. Okay. Spin it, baby.
Oh, we're spinning. Oh, we are spinning. We have a movie called Minutemen, and James, I got to be honest with you, I don't know this one. We were very close to Camp Rock and the Twitches and almost High School Musical.
Oh, man. We landed. What the hell is this? Minutemen? All right, I guess I got to look this up.
Do you want to respin off?
Nope, we're watching. We're watching this. We are 100% watching this.
Oh, boy.
This looks awful. This looks really bad. And we're watching it.
So we're watching Minutemen.
It's going to be a very low draw of audience because people are going to say, what the hell is that? So with that, we want to thank you guys for listening. Thanks for watching. And we encourage you to follow us. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube at Just Play It Podcast. We are on X at Just Play It Pod. And no hint for next week because we're going to be watching a DCOM joint. So, Nick, I'm going to throw out a crazy bombshell at the end of my tag here of what we need to do next week. But for now, we're heading gone. And remember, if you get kicked off a car, you best believe there's going to be a gang of monkeys ready to pick you up, and you're going to be a Vine brother and swing into victory. We'll see you next week. Nick, during our DCOM episode, we cannot swear because it's Disney appropriate. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night. And then runs away like a loser idiot.
This guy swings on vines. This is my guy.